Hello, team. Hello, everybody. How are you? The Wednesday poll question at smirconish.com. Should police be permitted to use facial recognition technology in public spaces to identify and locate individuals wanted by law enforcement? Michael, why are you asking that? I shall tell you in just a moment. First, let me thank my friends at Parks Casino and Play Gun Lake, New York, Philadelphia, Detroit baseball, plus the Pro Golf Tour and the New York Pro Hoops. A lot of excitement around New York Pro Hoops. The playoffs are here. Live bet it all. You can wager and watch. Live betting is better on the BetParks app in PA, NJ, and Maryland. And on the Play Gun Lake app in Michigan, you can bet individual player performances in baseball, like player hits and home runs, RBIs, strikeouts, points, rebounds, and more on Pro Hoops. Whether your team wins or not, there's an opportunity for you to be successful. There's always another way to win on the BetParks Sportsbook and online casino app and the Play Gun Lake app in Michigan, the only that I ever use and recommend myself, especially during the summer. You're on the beach, you're on a lounge chair, wherever you are, you've got skin in the game. You can also play with live dealers right now on your phone, craps and poker and roulette, the hot online slots like Cash Eruption, 88 Fortunes, Cleopatra, all the fun stuff. Play hot online slots based on your favorite streaming shows like Walking Dead, Breaking Bad, and Squid Game. And new users, you get up to $1,000 casino bonus back if you're down in the first 24 hours. Just go to the betparks.com or playgunlake.com and download the app right now and enjoy all the action and excitement right from the fingertips, right from your phone. You've got to be 21 and in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, or Maryland for BetParks, 21 and in Michigan for Play Gun Lake. You love to play, you play to win, you bet. BetParks and Play Gun Lake. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. So yesterday, more than 30,000 votes cast on the Tuesday poll question to counter Donald Trump's influence. Should the Democratic Party recruit and embrace celebrity candidates? I was surprised. It was 2/3, 1/3. I was surprised that a full 1/3 said, yes, that's what they need to do. And if you were tuned in yesterday, if you listened to the podcast yesterday, you know that there were two items, two serious pieces that caught my eye. One from time.com. I'm never sure whether to say Time Magazine, and the other from the New York Times. The deep dive in Time was by Charlotte Alter. She interviewed dozens of elected Democrats, strategists, top DNC officials. This is for a cover story that comes out May 30. Here's a quote from it. They know they need fresh ideas and new leaders, even though they can't always agree on how to find them. On the party's aging leadership, Axios has reported that half of the 30 House Democrats older than 75 plan to run for re-election. The money quote in this piece. I think it was a huge mistake for our party to view Bernie Sanders, as a fringe threat to the party. Bernie's message all along has been the crossover message, the message that appeals to Democrats, but also a big element of Trump's base. Who said that? Senator Chris Murphy. So there was the Time piece, the sort of conventional look at the future of the Democratic Party. And then there was a piece in the Times by Leon Nakeff. I hope I'm doing right by that pronunciation. And he said, no, what we need is more Jerry Springer. And he started out his piece by saying, consider this, given that Hollywood is often caricatured as a hotbed of liberalism, it's surprising that Republicans seem so much better than Democrats at the showbiz side of politics. Two Republican presidents have stars on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, Reagan and Trump, as does former Republican governor of California, Arnold Schwarzenegger. And yet, among liberals, there persists a sense that running celebrities for public office is somehow déclassé, cynical, or simply not something a serious party does. And then the author of this piece goes on to talk about Jerry Springer and his very unique political career. He had a very successful political career until he didn't in Ohio, and then turned his attention to the talk show, the one that we all remember because it was the epitome of trash TV. Nobody is arguing that that version of Jerry Springer should be a Democratic candidate for president, no less. But there are elements in what was argued here that I thought made a great deal of sense. The closing paragraph. In hindsight, Mr. Springer's story lends credence to the notion that politics and entertainment have more in common than we like to admit. If nothing else, Democrats must get past their aversion to the unseriousness of celebrity and treat it as a selling point, not a stumbling block. Why not Oprah Winfrey? Or ESPN personality Stephen A. Smith, or Shark Tank personality and billionaire Mark Cuban. Just pick someone who's willing to run, who's good at his or her job, and who lots of people like. Democrats would do well not to let the next Jerry Springer slip away. Or as my government professor said back in the day at Lehigh, political parties exist for one purpose: to win. Win, baby, win, right? 2/3 of you who voted at smerconish.com said no to the celebrity in terms of looking for the next face of the party. By the way, polling data that we have in the newsletter today on this Wednesday suggests that the one face of the party today is AOC. And she's taken on a whole celebrity quotient. Okay, Wednesday, today, poll question of the day. And I knew I was going to do this after yesterday's interview with Nathan Freed Wessler from the ACLU. Should police be permitted to use facial recognition technology in public spaces to identify and locate individuals wanted by law enforcement? What motivated me to ask this question? It was a Washington Post really well done story. Douglas McMillan and Aaron Schaefer wrote it, and it begins this way. For 2 years, New Orleans police secretly relied on facial recognition technology to scan city streets in search of suspects, a surveillance method without a known precedent in any major American city that may violate municipal guardrails around use of the technology, an investigation by the Washington Post has found. Apparently, if you're in the French Quarter and if you're in other areas of New Orleans, it is like being in London, one of the most surveilled cities in the world, and probably the most surveilled city in the Western world, meaning, non-China, non-Singapore. So yesterday I read from the story and I interviewed my guest, because my guest was ideally situated. He's deputy director with the ACLU Speech Privacy and Technology Project. He argued a case in 2017 in front of the Supreme Court of the United States that established the Fourth Amendment requires law enforcement to get a search warrant before requesting cell phone location data from a person's cellular service provider. So this is right in his wheelhouse. He knew the background of this case. And, I wanted to ask him what's wrong with, given that we're talking about public spaces, what's wrong with the use of facial recognition technology? Actually, what I said to him is it kind of reminds me of my argument that if the public has a right to be there in a public context, in a government context, then why shouldn't a camera be there? You've heard me say this about the Supreme Court of the United States and about courtrooms across the country. We don't allow, think of the Diddy trial that's going on right now as compared to the Karen Read trial. There are courtrooms present in the Massachusetts courtroom where Karen Read is being tried. There are no cameras present in the federal courthouse in New York where Diddy is on trial because the federal courts don't allow it. The Supreme Court doesn't allow it. We just had an argument a week ago on birthright citizenship, and I lamented again. We hear the audio. We're now hearing the audio in real time. Why can't we watch? And my rule of thumb has always been that if you could pull up a chair and you could go watch your government in action, then a camera ought to be there representing us. You've heard me say this about the local school board, about the local county courthouse, about the federal courthouse, and indeed about the Supreme Court of the United States and about the House and the Senate. So that's my frame of reference. And I wondered the same thing about technology. For example, in my community, I often see police cars parked on a median strip, and my belief is that they are, among other things, not only keeping an eye on traffic, but running plates, using technology to run the plates of cars going by. And if they see somebody who's wanted for something, they're going to do something about it. Well, what's the difference between that and having a police officer standing at an intersection when there's an Amber Alert, when there's an APB, for a red Toyota? and all of a sudden he or she sees a red Toyota. You would expect them to act. So why isn't it the same when we use technology instead of the human eye? I mean, that was one of the things that I wondered. Similarly, if a police officer could be standing in the town square anywhere USA, and they see someone that they believe is wanted for a crime, you would expect that they would pursue and question that individual. I don't think any of us would have a problem with that. So why would we object when instead of having an officer standing in that location, it's a camera doing the same drill? Technology, my point is here. In fact, another thought I have is it must be becoming very difficult to break the law and get away with it. The combination of DNA. Think about the Koberger case, which is about to go to trial in August in Idaho. Cameras, as I'm discussing, artificial intelligence, still ill-defined just how much that's going to help law enforcement. That's a good thing, I think. But I acknowledge, based on my conversation with my guest yesterday, that we need guardrails. I mean, his argument when I said, well, if a cop could recognize someone, if a cop could recognize a car by using technology on plates, then why is this a bad thing? A number of callers called and said, well, law enforcement can't be trusted. And to that point, my guest from the ACLU on this subject made the observation that the information, unlike the human eye, is being stored by law enforcement. Making the observation, Nathan Freed Wessler said this, that, who knows what that will be used for in the future. And I thought I had a great caller yesterday who called and said, imagine the intersection of the public and private sector in this case. What happens when the private sector gets its hands on this information? If you had access to all the foot traffic in the French Quarter and you owned a bar or restaurant there, I mean, I can imagine how you'd want that information and maybe try and recruit, send food coupons, advertise. And in New Orleans, it is a private entity that is providing this service for law enforcement. So, okay, I concede we need guardrails, but if there were an act of terror, if there were, say, the Tsarnaev brothers and the Boston bombing, and we were looking for them, wouldn't we all be saying, use the facial recognition technology? It's the Washington Post. We had it in the newsletter that has the background on this subject. The comments were really interesting appended to that story. Quote, this is the same technology they'll use to capture you buying street corner black market condoms when birth control becomes illegal, or sneaking back to your apartment when you're out past the 9 p.m. curfew. There is a day after tomorrow where anyone they choose to persecute will be guilty of something. Think before you applaud the disillusion of your rights. Someone else similarly said, to paraphrase Ben Franklin, those who are willing to give up liberty for security deserve neither. Some people were supportive. A person from the UK, we have them all over the place in the UK, and car number plate cameras on main roads. Mainly, it's only the criminals who object now after some years of cameras resulting in convictions going up for illegal drivers and thieves in shops and on the street. We've accepted it's a compromise worth making to keep us safer from bad drivers, thieves, pickpockets, and robbers. At least we don't have guns to contend with. So those are the arguments. And by the way, the UK was dealt with in the Washington Post deep dive. And according to that reporting, they've never had a case of false identity resulting in arrest when they're using this level of technology. I think it's a great poll question. I hope you do. I hope you'll cast a ballot on it. Should police be permitted to use facial recognition technology in public spaces to identify and locate individuals wanted by law enforcement? Go to smerconish.com, cast your Wednesday vote, like and subscribe, and set yourself up for notifications. Thank you.